Okay.
Hussam?
Okay. Shall we start, Madhu?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to our sixth panel discussion of the DFOT, this discussion forum for online teaching. Uh, this is a effort. This is completely voluntary, which has been going on for the past few months. And what we hope to do over here is to just provide some kind of a sounding board, a venting space, some kind of information to each other, colleagues, about how any one of us is coping with the transition from regular classroom teaching to online teaching. Now, as all of us are, painfully aware, in March we were given basically 2 days notice and told to completely convert to online. And in different institutions, students were then encouraged to go home. In some cases, they were forced to go home, and so on and so forth. And all classes went online. That was March. There was some illusion that this pandemic would be over, but pretty soon it has become clear that at least this semester is definitely going to be all online. And very likely, given the way in which things are, numbers are increasing in Delhi, it will go online for next semester as well. Different subjects are able to cope with it in very different ways, because there are subjects like physics and biology and chemistry where without a lab you can't think in terms of giving especially a master's degree or an undergraduate degree. And there are subjects where you could, like computer science or programming or something like that, you can substitute for labs in different and interesting ways. So over the past 3 months now, DFOT has been having these panel discussions. We don't have solutions, but each one of us is doing something right, because we are here and we are continuing to go on, and we are staying on with a certain amount of spirit. So there is something that we have that we can share with each other, because it's pretty clear that nobody else is going to share. There is no right answer. Our problems are unique to us because our students are unique to us and our subject is unique to us. And there's no point railing against the darkness of administration, which is not going to give all of you laptops or iPads or whatever. And we might as well do something about it. So one of the things that we discussed in the previous panel discussion was how to teach mathematics or theoretical subjects. We are going to worry about how to teach, experimental subjects. Just what are the things that people are doing? We are worried about, how we teach students with disabilities. How, as it is, they were having a bad time, without the additional complications of the pandemic. But how do you address special needs students? All right. And today we turn to the following topic, which to me at least is paramount, because we are teachers, of course, but we are also researchers. And this is something that people forget. They somehow imagine that teaching and research are separate compartments. But I know that one of the most difficult things for all of us has been the lack of ability to do research. Some part of it has been because facilities have shut down, and there are reasons why they should shut down. But also, we do research with our students. We do research with as the process of mentoring. This is us. So what I thought we would discuss today is both how does one manage to do research, especially if one is in an experimental science. How has one managed or coped over the last 8 months? Because this 8 months and 9 months is not a short period. And for some subjects, for every subject, for every researcher of any with any passion for his or her subject, 8 months is a long time of inactivity. Then we also have students, and for them, fellowships run out. There are all sorts of problems that they have. They're growing older. right? A person who would have graduated at age 25 now has to contemplate graduating at age 26 or 27. So these are all issues, and I'm only giving a somewhat lengthy introduction to all this because we, I mean, what is forgotten in this background of, online teaching, as if that's the only thing we do. We don't only give exams and run tests or stuff like that. We do research, and we have all worried about how to supervise research in the online era, and we worried about how the students themselves are going to cope with being online, because the world productivity of research is continuing unabated. Right, so there is, advances that are being made, and at some it's some sort of in some strange way, one doesn't want to be left behind. So today's panel discussion has asked five of you who are active researchers pre-pandemic and mid-pandemic. All of you have stayed active in research and are concerned as teachers. So I'd like you to just share your experiences. We've discussed some of the questions that you might like to frame your discussion around as we are going along. And we've done this already now. So what I'd like to do is to invite each of you to speak for about 10, 12 minutes or so. Share with us how you are, how you see some of these issues, how you're coping with some of these issues, and then we'll go from there. So to start off this discussion, can I invite Professor Chandrasekar from the University of Hyderabad? Right. Uh, Professor Chandrasekar is in the School of Chemistry at the University of Hyderabad, and he runs a very active research group. In fact, the entire School of Chemistry is a very active research. It's a research department. So, we'd like to particularly hear from you, Chandrasekar, as to how y'all have, approached these last 8, 9 months or so. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. So I don't have any presentation, but I will take a specific question and try to address so 3, 4 questions, and let me finish that within 10 plus minutes. So the question about research output, the quantum of research output changed during the pandemic period or not? So it is the definition of research output in this lockdown period needs to be clearly defined. To my understanding or opinion, it is twofold. That can be, number one, research output, publication specific, and two, intellectual growth. If you take the former, that is the research output, it varies, and is also research area specific and also scientist specific. In my research lab, as far as my research area is concerned, whoever is practicing the kind of experimental science which I do, we practice experimental material science. It does matter as it needs direct participation of supervisor in experiments to make essential suggestions when the students do research. On the other hand, we all know direct involvement or supervision of PhD students' experiments is a precarious exercise. So the research output is directly connected to the students. I personally feel it's not about the number of students, but the expert student, okay, or postdoc who has mastered the art of operating the state-of-the-art equipments, which is necessary for any experimental physicist or a chemist or a biologist, which we regularly bank on for our results in order to do our experiments. So my opinion is we don't have to complain about lack of access to experimental facility or absence of students to operate the facility. There are other things as scientists we can do, which I have done as well. I wrote and I have been writing a couple of reviews. Some of them are invited, and also taking to the next level. have been writing reviews with international collaborators as well. So this is taking care of the research output, publication specific. Okay, it need not be you do experiment and publish, but at the same time you can also write reviews. The second point is intellectual growth, which I mentioned before. It is also time for us in this unprecedented situation. It's time for us to revisit the research problems we have been practicing till now by asking the question never asked by others, or in a way asking ourselves questions relevant or not. The time has changed. Did we change or not? That type of question. Asking such questions might lead to a research proposal with an original idea. So, in fact, if the idea requires an interdisciplinary approach, that's okay. We have now ease of online meeting with the collaborators. That has improved a lot. We learned how to talk to people using online resources. Previously, it was not the case. So I see this as a kind of beginning of a new way of doing research. So the research output can be publications and also conceiving new and original ideas for a future research proposal submission. So this is how I see the research output. As far as research scholars, interaction with research scholars, online or face to face, how often we meet, is that network connectivity is an issue or not? These sort of questions also very much dependent upon the research area. And luckily, as I told you before, my research output is not dependent upon the number of students. It's about the quality of the question asked by the students in consultation with me. And fortunately, one of my students who did not leave the university during COVID lockdown, he consulted with me and my postdoc through WhatsApp. So we did not meet directly, but we found a way to use WhatsApp video calls. So whenever he did experiments, I could watch how he is doing and could give suggestion. And that is how we manage. And it is not only for doing research. Maintenance of the equipment was a big headache during lockdown, because some of these laser resources which we have needed temperature control. So one should also check whether the air conditioners are working or not. So this maintenance issue and also the operating aspects of the equipment, we managed successfully, okay, through these WhatsApp calls. And likewise, we say necessity is the mother of invention. COVID problem indeed, it encourages or forces creative efforts to meet the need or solve the problem. Okay. Now we have implemented unlock down 2 in our university. Okay, we had a phase-wise unlock down 1 and 2, and the PA student postdocs are slowly coming in. And so I adopt both online and face-to-face meeting, unquestionably with mask and following the social distancing norms. How many days in a week? And that is there is no restriction. We discuss every day, sometimes several times in a day, through WhatsApp, and also sometime in person, maintaining the distance. And so most of the time we discuss outside students' room or outside my office. So when the student come, we go outside to the lobby, and there we stand and speak. And luckily, I did not. My student did not face any network connectivity issue, because we are in urban areas, which may not be the case. One of my students from Ladakh, so seldom we discussed, because always he had issues with his network. And this is also very important. Okay, maintaining the equipment to take care of crores of equipments, functional or not. We used WhatsApp video calls to interact with the students. Sometimes I also visited to ensure that the equipment is taken care of, the temperature or maintained or not. And what kind of support we received from university, that is quite, nobody expected how we have to react. In my university, the answer is yes. Our university administration have done a wonderful job. kind of, what happened actually, we have had about 70 plus students who were stuck in the hostel, mostly from remote states or other states, but could not travel. And our administration effectively handled the situation. In fact, we were thinking of sending them to their homes. And then we realized that if we send them, who will take care of most of the equipments? Okay. So then we changed our stand, and in fact, we effectively handled the situation. We accommodated them in the hostels, hiring special cooks. Finding cooks also difficult. So we found special cooks and implemented new hostel norms to contain the spread of virus in the hostel. So this was quite a success. And out of the 70 plus students, one of my students was also there, who was taking care of all the laser facilities and the microscope facility. And the student future also dependent upon the research result. Okay, and therefore to take care of research output. In our university, we have a special task force as well. And what they do is, they are the people, the team which implements the unlockdown 1 and recently 2. So the student must follow the necessary protocol to join the fellow student. Second student who wants to join my team, still outside, he has to wait 14 days. And then everything is okay. If he feels comfortable, everything is okay, then we will let him inside to the campus, and he will join our students. So this is how we are planning to do, effectively manage the situation. And as far as this student psychology, also very, very important. Okay, the research is a lot of good and bad things will happen when any research if you implement. And so the maintaining the mental health of the research scholars is very, very important. Okay, it's very important as a supervisor to take care of the psychological welfare of the research students. Okay, it's very, very important. Apart from research, we should also see the other side, their social background, from where they are coming from, and they're staying in hostel. And I can tell you that one of my students, he was complaining that 2 months I never had non-veg in the hostel because we gave them food. So I could what I could do is, whenever I prepare non-veg in my house, I used to bring him in a box and I used to give him. That is small thing I could do to make him happy. Okay, so these are some of the tiny small aspects, but very important to take care of the mental welfare of students, because just to make him or her understand that the students are there for them, not always waiting for the good results, but also taking care of their food and other health aspects. Okay, and I also tell my students, okay, particularly whenever they do the experiment, they have to update me about the experiment which they have done. So I tell them there are no good or bad results. It's all about your perception and interpretation. The former requires attentiveness and the latter requires affection for what you chose to do. So I always remind them, it is not me who told you to do PhD in chemistry, it is you chose. So when you choose something, you should respect. So fall in love with your research and enjoy. And this is what I advise them to take care of the mental health. So this is a brief summary of this topic on how.
Thank you very much, Chandrasekar. No, I think it's very valuable. Also to learn how the University of Hyderabad has addressed it as a university. You should realize that this is a very unusual reaction. I mean, which is why Hyderabad is what it is, right? But this is what makes a place. Now, I think that many people who are listening, even from other very well-known universities, know that it is an unusual occurrence that so many PhD students have stayed on campus. All right, and in many institutions, unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but people have not shown this kind of sensitivity. I mean, I like the fact that you make non-veg at home and take it for your students, but I'm sure that's not going to happen for a lot of students. Anyway, thanks a lot, Chandrasekar. We'll come back. There'll be questions or some discussion later on. Let's now move to Professor Lalremsanga from the Department of Zoology at Mizoram University in Aizawl. Professor, there you are. Would you unmute yourself, please? And uh, I know that Professor Lalremsanga works on snakes, so be interesting to see how his research has progressed during this time. Please.
Thank you, sir. Actually, I'm working on both amphibians and reptiles, but mainly I'm focused these days on uh, snakes. Uh, as you know that there in Mizoram, this COVID-19 it enters quite bit late, about 4 or 5 months back. But still, our university is very cautious, and this security are also very strong and very strict. But fortunately, I have three students who are permanently staying in the campus. So they keep on working in the laboratory because their hostel it is very close to our department. So we keep on working, and whenever there is a partial lockdown, I used to go and help them and supervise them what to do and what kinds of paper we can produce and like that. So even nighttime and daytime, I used to invigilate them from home also. Then through WhatsApp video call and all these things, I told them how and what to do, which article we are going to write and like that. As you know, unlike this metropolitan Aizawl, our university campus is uh, somehow in the forested area. Then my work, I'm running at present. I'm running four major projects that is based on the field work in the protected areas like in the Patega Reserve, Balag National Wetland, Ramdil National Wetland, and Wareng Wildlife Sanctuary. It covers almost whole area of the state. So during partial lockdown and before that COVID-19, students, when they went for a field work, they collected many samples, many specimens. So we are taking advantage that during this lockdown period to examine our specimens and to study and to uh, do literature survey like that. So we keep on sending paper and we are writing. And at present, in more than 12 journals, we already published papers. Some are new species and some are going to be new like that. So students, sometimes they also have problem in going out to the field. But as you know that in rural area, there is some relaxation. They can stay in the forest IB and like that, and with their friends and forest staff. So still there is a lot of problem for going through different villages. As you know that in a more remote area, they are afraid of those people who came from the city because they are suspecting us that we might be infected by this pandemic disease. And I also praise our university authority. Uh, as far as my knowledge, still today there is no positive case in the campus. But those people who used to come from the city, who are staff and students, uh, a handful of them are tested positive. But as soon as they know about that, they used to circulate the information and they used to put them in the quarantine. So in our lab, we are just keep uh, staying in the lab whenever we do work. We never visit other places like academic and administrative, other academic and administrative office like that. So we did our work and doing all the experiment. And whenever we need some molecular data or DNA sequencing, we used to wait for this partial lockdown. So whenever there is a partial lockdown, we used to send our sample for sequencing in the Hyderabad, Bangalore, like that. Then through mail and this WhatsApp, they used to inform all the information. They used to send all the sequence data, and sometimes used to collaborate with abroad people also. So luckily, because of these internet facilities, we can do lots of work 24/7. And even at night time, my student, they can go to lab and they can, suppose if we need some more data on the morphology of our specimen, I used to ask them to go to the lab and to check the specimen and to do all the necessary, to take all the necessary data like that. So unlike other science, our work is not completely based on experimental. So, but our work is on morphological examination and some molecular data analysis, and this literature survey is also very important because we are at present we are mainly based on the taxonomy, and moreover we are doing natural history of some rare species, endemic species of amphibians and reptiles like that. And plus, in addition to this, our advantage is in the field work, because in the jungle and in the forest, no need to care about this COVID, and we used to spend night and like that. Uh, Only the problem is for transportation. But once when there is a partial lockdown here in Mizoram, uh, suppose tomorrow, this week, this two past week, it is a total lockdown. No one is allowed to go outside, residents. But from tomorrow onwards, there will be partial lockdown again with identity card and all those things, those which are necessary for going out, they are allowing. So in this condition, like just 2 3 days or 1 week like that, we used to take advantage for going to the field and collect our sample needed. So like that, we are running this. I'm running my uh, research work along with my students, and I don't know the situation what will be coming up, but I hope we are will be managed to adjust with the upcoming situation also. And nighttime survey is also important in our work. Uh, as I told you before, our university campus, it is quite rich in these amphibian and reptiles. So even my students, they can go to the field in the campus, in the streams, surveying the streams and these ponds and uh, some forested area. So till today, they are getting a good, interesting specimen which we are going to work on. Once they get collected, then we process them for further research work. So whenever I have a free time to go there, whenever there is a partial lockdown, I used to go and help them and do all the examination. So in this way, we are just running the uh, our present work like that only.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Lalremsanga. I think that WhatsApp video is turning out to be an extension of oneself. So it's just the shortened form of the phone and Zoom. But it's also interesting that, for your students to be able to do research, being on campus is as important as any other, because your entire campus is a natural laboratory, if I understood correctly. Anyway, thank you for sharing about Mizoram. It is a smaller university, but central university, but it's in a remote place, and the importance of internet and connectivity is as primary over there. Okay. Our next speaker is Professor Anindita Bhadra from IISER, Kolkata. She is a behavioral biologist, I don't know what is the correct field of research, but she works on animals and animal behavior. Anindita, would you tell us how things are at the IISER
Yeah,
Kolkata?
thanks, Ram. So, my experience has been actually quite different because I work on street dogs, and I was expecting something like a lockdown to come by. So, actually, we stopped fieldwork, and I called back my students and asked them to wrap up because I was worried that things are going to go wrong. But I went through a horrible period because two of my students were doing field work in the north. They were uh, planning to go on to Hardwar, and they were stuck in Chandigarh when the lockdown was suddenly announced and we were not getting ways of getting them back. And they had a whole pan-India fieldwork plan. So tickets had been bought and bookings had been made. And the next stop was Bangalore. So they somehow managed to get to Bangalore where they had friends. And throughout the total lockdown, they were stranded in Bangalore. And I had to find ways of managing funds to get them sustained in Bangalore to ensure that they have food. So they actually stayed with a friend in a rented house and cooked for themselves, did not do any field work. And that was a lot of tension. Also, my other students, I had MS students doing their dissertation projects at that time. And we had, of course, I have my PhD students. And all of the fieldwork stopped and nothing is going on even now because stray dogs are in the middle of the cities and I just cannot risk my students going out and doing fieldwork even now because it's risky. People are not wearing masks and I don't want to be exposing them to anything. In fact, one student who was actually staying with his family and has not come back to campus insisted on going out a bit, and in spite of my telling me not to, he did, and now he is COVID positive. So you can imagine it's a huge risk, and I don't even know when we will resume. I have students at different levels of their PhDs. All of their fieldwork is stuck, and we typically don't do much work on campus because the campus dogs are kind of accustomed to these students. So we don't get good data with them. So even on campus, we cannot do anything. So my students are effectively going to lose 1 year, and I'm worried about their fellowships. I'm worried about their data. Most of all, I'm worried about their mental health because it's taking a huge toll. Two of them were stuck on campus, one in the hostel and one who actually stays just outside. She was completely on her own, alone, locked up in one flat throughout the pandemic. And that has taken a lot of toll on her mental health, her physical health. And during the lockdown, during this entire period, the way I have been trying to work with my students was again Zoom meetings, keeping them connected to each other. We did weekly meetings, told people, okay, tell us what you did, not just work. If you read a book, let's talk about it. If you had a fight with your family, let's talk about it. And that's what we were doing, and that was helping us remain connected. In fact, IISER Kolkata, we had a very peculiar situation. We are away from the city. So we had an autumn break for the BSMS students. They went home, and then we were told shut down. So we told them, please don't come back. But by the time we told them, some of them were already on their way back from different parts of India. Then, it was total chaos. The administration had to ensure that all the MS students went back. So we actually had 200 students, approximately all PhDs, who were stuck on campus. They were on the hostel. So we did not really completely shut down, but we were not allowed to open the labs. So students who work in labs which have equipments were given passes to come and look at the equipment and ensure that they were maintained. But still, my colleagues are telling me that a lot of equipments are not working. But for the first 2 months, there was no research. But for people whose students were on campus, they could come back and start research in phases. But for me, my students being on campus and being able to come to the lab doesn't help. They need to go out in the streets, and we cannot go out into the streets. So my research is like completely under lockdown even now. What we have been doing, of course, I've been telling students, do online courses. So, catch up on your statistics, do courses on things which are of interest to you. So my students are active in many things. So they are doing science communication. Um, the one student who stays near campus, she actually is leading the science magazine of IISER Kolkata. So she was the only one who was on campus. So the science magazine has been running thanks to her. By staying on campus, they have been able to engage in these activities, which I think is very good. We have been doing a lot of talks and outreach events, and I think we have been able to keep the students engaged because of this, but not because of progress and collection of data. Senior students who had data are using this time to write up papers. It's not that we've not done anything. On paper, we have published. One of the students who was stranded in Bangalore came back and defended his thesis online, and he's even gone off for a postdoc. So things are in principle moving. But I think now, as we are continuing in this stage for a longer and longer period, my bigger concern is mental health for students. I can keep them engaged, but the stress of losing 1 year of PhD and then eventually not having a fellowship to wrap up work in the end is something which is going to take a lot of heavy toll on a lot of students across the country, and it's already showing up. And that's something which is going to affect my students too. So that is my biggest concern.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anindita. No, you've raised an important issue about the mental health of students. Without meaning to be facetious, the mental health of teachers is also something that is a matter of concern, because all of us are reacting to it in very different ways. One of the more important, in addition to, of course, the mental, one of the things that impacts the students the most is the sustenance of scholarships. Many institutions are not in a position to give their students and the continuing fellowship, even though they've lost basically a year. For example, I have a PhD student who is on the so-called UGC fellowship, and when 4 years is over, 4 years is over. There is no way in which he is going to get an extra stipend just because he's lost 8 or 9 months of his research life over here. Now, that is a huge strain on people, and it actually can be a very severe retardation to their ability to do the PhD, because they're not able to support themselves anymore. Right? So this is a major issue. I'm glad to hear that IISER Kolkata is able to take care of it in some way, but it's one of a small set of institutions that can actually afford it. I don't think most universities could afford to
No,
support.
even IISER, I don't think will be able to do this for all the students, because the amount of money that it'll end up being is going to be very high. So we
Exactly.
don't know what we are going to do. And as you know, that the funds are not really as good as they used to be for research now. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah. No, I
And
mean,
also, I think that takes a toll on the faculty, because we have a lot of people are talking about less work because they're working from home, but I think for academicians the work has increased. A class which I could just wake up in the morning and go and teach for 1 hour, it takes me 3 hours to prepare for a class, the same class, because now I have to do you were talking about courses which need interaction. So last semester when we stopped and suddenly we had to convert to online teaching, I was teaching evolutionary biology, and this course I've been teaching in IISER Kolkata for the last 11 years. For the first time I found it difficult to teach the course, because I go and talk and we have discussions. It's almost like teaching philosophy when you're teaching evolution, and you can't just have PowerPoint slides and videos to teach evolution if you don't have a discussion. And we have 150 students, and we faced a lot of issues because students have gone back home in rural areas. I had a student in Jammu, and she's saying, what videos? I'm on 2G and I have to do classes. I cannot do classes. What do we do? I think in some cases where you have students from the locality, it's one way because everybody suffers the same way. But we have a huge distribution of students who are in urban areas and students who are in very remote areas, and access becomes a big problem.
no, actually, this is an issue that many of our speakers have talked about. And, the ability to engage with students during a lecture class is one thing. Today's discussion is really about how
More
we are
about the
possibly
research, right?
doing research, and you've got an important area where the world is your laboratory, so to speak. No, I mean, for
Yes.
your students to gather data, they have to go out. In another week, we are going to do, or at another discussion, we will worry about how social sciences are coping, because so much of social science work is quantitative these days, and it requires going and collecting data, which
Data.
as you point out, you cannot do because you will not endanger your students by letting them go. So all good points, and but one thing that actually that you have highlighted, which I think all of us are aware of in one way or the other, is the mental health of not just the students but also the composite, the research group. The mental health of the research group is very important. Keeping them well fed, keeping them safe, that's as important as anything else. If you're and they're not just machines to do research for you, right? They're people who are pursuing their own questions, right? Okay, so fine. I'm sure we'll come back to some of these issues in discussion. Let me call now upon Professor Shankarnarayanan from IIT Bombay. Shanky, as he is more popularly known, is in the Department of Physics at IIT Bombay, and he is doing mainly theoretical research. But he has a presentation, and Shanky, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Ram, for inviting me here. So I thought I'll just give a presentation because I tried a few things. Some things worked, some things didn't work. So I thought maybe people can figure it out what will work for them. So I just thought I'll just give a bit of research of what I do. I do primarily theoretical and computational work on gravity and cosmology. So I have a group of 10 people. So 5 PhD students, 2 postdocs, and 3 undergraduate. So it's a mid-sized group, and most of the students are not from urban areas. Many of them from rural areas. Okay, so that is something which I just wanted to. All the 2 undergraduate students are from rural, and PhD students, 4 of them are from rural areas. In the sense, they had very not very good connectivity. So I thought so that is one thing which is important. So the thing is, when students come, they either have this impression that every day is a Saturday or you have to work on Saturdays. Okay, so this is one of the good cartoons which I keep putting it and telling my students that you should never be in either of these positions. Okay, you should be so you should never get into any of these positions. Then your things are reasonably safe actually. Okay, but of course, there will be a situation where you will be in either state because in 5 years of PhD is always like this. Now, this idea has taken a completely a different dimension in COVID times, actually. Okay, so I'll just explain what I mean, actually. So one thing which we do as a PhD student research is it has 2 parts. Basically, 2 interconnected parts. One I call it as success. Other one is basically innovative research. Okay, both of them are interconnected because if you have innovative research, you will also be successful. Okay, but of course the degree of it is different. So success is basically for a STEM research, for instance, publications, patents, and other things, and conference proceedings and things like that. The innovative research is basically a very high risk. Okay, and as a supervisor, everybody of us know that it is always risk. So we have some plan with the student, but most of the time the plan is never set in stone because we know that it's a haze. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes none of them will work because most of the time it's a Murphy's law is at work actually. Because we know that we think something is expected, but most of the time it'll never come out actually because it's time bound. PhDs are 5 years, and first year of coursework is done, and so it's basically 4 years. So and 3.5 years is what I would assume because last 6 months I leave it as for the students' thesis and things like that. Okay, so this is the background in which most of us actually work on. So what I used to do before the COVID is basically my students and I work in a synchronous mode. What I mean by synchronous mode is I'll be in my office, they'll be there in their desks, and when they want, they can meet me during the office hours anytime they want. Okay, and if they need anything, then they can send me an email. This is how we were actually working. And one-to-one meeting with the student always used to be 2 hours per week. And then a group meeting was 2.5 hours per week. That's basically it is. And if there is anything they want to update or something, that is through a Dropbox. Now with the COVID announced and in IIT, what they did is they told all the PhD students should leave the campus BTechs, MTechs also had to leave, and all the PhD students had to leave within a week. Basically, few days is what was given. For 1 week is what the maximum time was given. So what I basically did is I did in a 3 phase. I call it as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So the phase 1 was basically what I thought it as a consolidation phase. It's basically a consolidation phase for myself and for the students. Basically, since they were traveling and it was a risk of their traveling in flights, so I basically told that you don't worry about anything for the next 2-3 weeks. Basically, I tell them that take care of their health and their family, and they were anywhere on quarantine and they were taking care of it. So I decided not to do anything with them. Just leave it as a vacation for everybody. Just didn't do anything with them for 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And I told them that since I'm a theory, and I told them that let us assume that you're all going to not going to come back till December. So I think I told them this already, thinking that theoretical sciences will be given the lower importance, because students who are doing PhD in lab work will be given the highest importance. So I told them this. And the most important thing which I decided was that I will avoid any email communication with them. I think that I thought was very impersonal. So which I thought that I will avoid any email conversation. So the second one was basically I was trying to figure it out how to do a communication with them. That's basically because some of them are thirsty to do research. Also, they also are interested in finishing off stuff. Some works were always pending. So what I did was I was trying to set up a channel, communication channel, create a structure, which is basically what I tried. And what I did was to think about how much time each student will be able to give time, because they are in their hometown. We don't know whether they have electricity cuts. Actually, it happened that many students had electricity cuts during the time. And of course, there is no reliable internet connection because they were all coming from many rural areas. Okay. So basically, and then I told them that what are the realistic they can have in their expectations they can have in the research. Okay. So I think that is important, because I told them that we can do all this, but considering that there is a lot of things, I actually had us talk to each one of them and say that this is what is possible, this is not possible. Also, because I had to shut down we had a cluster which we shut it down because there was no power when we didn't know whether there was anybody there. So we actually shut down uh, our cluster as well. So I told them that what is possible and what is not possible, and we will. So what I did was basically try to make sure that I wanted to avoid much of the a very heavy duty network issues. So I told them that for every project, I will use a Google Hangout as a channel. Okay, which is a nice thing, because then everybody has a Gmail account, so that Google comes out free for that. Hangout is free. And interesting is, for every channel, they can send a message if they are having a doubt with respect to that project or in that for each student, and they can send anytime they want. The most important is I told them that we will actually be doing in an asynchronous mode, because they will be working on a time where they will feel comfortable, because they might be having other problems, as I said, because of the internet, as well as because of electricity. So we will not be working in a synchronous mode, so we will be working in an asynchronous mode. So what I did is to start, instead of an email, I just said that we will ignore the email at all. So we don't chat this thing. We'll use a Hangouts, Google Hangouts, and which also has a video conferencing, and it actually consumes very little data compared to even WhatsApp, for instance. So that is something which we tried, and most of the student had no issue with the Hangout connection. For a group meeting, we just said we will have everything assembled in a Google Classroom, and students, whenever they want to they will put it as in the Google Classroom. And the Google Meet, we had it such a way that there is no video sharing, only audio, and a lot of people can actually connect, and people actually could present. Every week we had 2 group meetings, such that people could present their talks and whatever was happening and things like that. And I used to insist on a weekly updates, which I converted into a fortnight episode, so that then I just said that whenever you are free, you can actually try to do that. So what I've been telling them is to keep writing. Basically, every fortnight, I told them to type whatever results they have, update it frequently, and compile all the results into a story and see what pieces are missing. So this has actually helped most of my students. Basically, every time they write on themselves without asking me, they itself figure it out that what are the problems which they face or what they don't understand. And then since we work on asynchronous mode, they write whenever they feel like, and then they tell me this, and I tell them to repeat these 3 steps every fortnight and see what is the missing piece. And it has turned out to be okay. I think with all the students, with all the 5 out of 5 students, 4 students, I could actually finish off a paper with each one of them. So I think it has been fine. That is only because I'm doing theoretical work. Actually, I should tell you that as well.
No, I think
I'll stop at this. I'll stop at this.
theory or no theory, Shanky, what you've done, I mean, thanks for systematizing what you had actually done. Could you stop sharing the screen?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll stop. Yes.
yeah, good.
Yeah, sure.
No, I mean, some very useful practical tips that you have given. I think many of these things, when you see them now, it's like, oh God, this is so obvious. We should have tried this, or we shouldn't have tried, whatever. But the fact of the matter remains that this is not the common practice in the country. And of course, it's not possible in many subjects. You know, as you also are sensitive to. Um, for now a completely different experience, let me invite Shobhan Sen from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Uh, Shobhan was my colleague in the School of Physical Sciences there. He is, he's a chemist. He's an experimental scientist, works with lasers that need both upkeep and students to keep running. And JNU, of course, has approached this entire question of the pandemic in a very different way. And it'd be interesting to hear from Shobhan how he has coped or not coped with.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Ram. Thanks, Ram, for the introduction. Yeah. My experience is mixed, to be very frank. But I want to pitch in here more of a positive note. In a sense, yes, as Ram said, I'm an experimentalist by training. I do ultra-fast spectroscopy, mostly fluorescence, and also single molecule spectroscopy and everything. But 5-6 years back, we also started exploring some of the computations where we try to directly compare the our experimental results with our simulation result kind of stuff. And we have published several of those papers. So the important fact that it remained during this lockdown period, in fact, till now, in fact, still we are now unlocking step by step. So that theory part that we explored for the last 4 or 5 years, it really helped us a lot during this time. So in a sense, I will divide the entire period until now in 3 segments. So first segment would be from, let's say, 18th of March till around June, early June or so. During that time, everybody were perplexed. I mean, we were not thinking that what to do and how to cope up with. One positive thing was always there with me that, we obviously live in the campus. So in a sense, to check your labs and the instruments and the UPS, one of the biggest issue that happened, several in the labs also during the time, to check all the things. So, once in a week, at least, you can take some special permission to go inside the lab and just check that everything is fine or not. However, what we noticed is that during this, summer period, typically in May end, things became very hot. Meaning, even because my lab is in the first floor and above that there is no floor, so it becomes very, very hot. And we typically keep a lot of flammable solvents and everything inside the lab. So I was very, very worried that something goes wrong, and that's an even bigger problem that will come up. luckily, so I have 5 PhD students and one project student, MSc project student for the time being now. And out of this 5 PhD students, one of them is a foreign student. He's from Congo, Clovis. So he obviously stayed back in the campus, and he was also very upset what to do and everything. He was fully locked inside the room. So then we had to take some kind of a little bit of special permission, at least to allow once in a week to allow him to come and check these lab conditions, especially the instruments, that at least the lasers are running or not. The UPS, one of the most important thing that we found out, several UPS actually gone also bad during this time. And also some of the things that he could do probably for 1 or 2 hours, something like that. So that was kind of was given. In fact, we had to go through the dean and also the the security person, and we had to say that this is because if we do not really allow at least once in a week somebody to check what is happening, it might even have a bigger problem in terms of the heat and everything can really jump up with a different problem altogether. So that was the point. And during the time, what we also realized, and everybody else were all gone home around that time. And obviously, everybody had the problem of these, internet issues and everything. However, we continued to have the discussions, let's say, in a weekly manner initially during that time. That's typically in the first 2.5 months. And obviously, what we would do that, I would send some papers to them, and they will read, and they will also come up with some papers. Although their networking was pretty bad, so obviously I had to send some of the papers from here, and we would, to some extent, explain or discuss. Now, the net connection they had in all these places, obviously they were not having so much of bandwidth. So what we used to do something like this. So in this particular computer, I used to put up those papers and try to go back. Okay, next kind of things like this. And we actually did quite a good job in that manner. And then we thought that, okay, from June onwards till, let's say, September, I would say October, around that time. So I said, see, this is not going to happen that way, and we are not going to achieve much through this month. So how we can go ahead? In fact, we had a lot of discussion with all the students, and who were kind of was able to connect through Google Meet or Zoom, in a sense, although without video most of the time. And we then decided that, okay, probably the best possible way would be that everybody should start learning computation. Because obviously in my group, somebody was given the charge for doing the computation, somebody was doing various experiments, and this is the way. Although everybody does everything in a sense in my lab. But then we saw that, okay, this is a good time, even for me, to really learn something. Which is new, and probably I have not done myself that much of computation, because every time I was giving them the instructions, can you do that, can you do this, and they would come up with the results, something like that. So I said, okay, this is a good time for me also to learn something. And then my student Deepika and we said to her that, can you teach us, like even the other lab mates, including me. And this is exactly what happened. We started this thing sometime, I believe, June or July, end of June or something, July, something like that. And the same way we were doing that in this same computer, we have started learning. In fact, I started learning all this, how to make input files and everything for running large scale all atomic simulations in Amber or GROMACS, which they were doing it for a long period of time. But I started learning, including all the other students in this computer. And in fact, probably around that time, we realized that in our lab we have 2 small workstations where we have the GPU cards and everything. So let's explore those things anyway. We can do something or the other. And in this particular computer, we started communicating to those computers through TeamViewer. So TeamViewer was one of the very important software that we have used extensively during this time, and still we are using. In fact, all my students are still out of campus, and Deepika is now regularly using that thing everyday basis. And in fact, in the morning I call her, I sit in front of the computer, and then she will tell something like, sir, I have done this kind of thing, and I will actually go and look at this one. So in a sense, we have achieved quite a lot in terms of learning by myself. Yeah, I learned a lot, during this time. And I was, by myself, I was running several of these MD simulations, were, analyzing. So I thought that this is the best time to learn. And apart from that, obviously, we were doing all the other things like writing some of the small projects. One of my students is going to submit the thesis very soon. Obviously, her thesis has got delayed because of several issues. Because of this, she couldn't actually access all the data. So I had to really send the data or something like that. And then, she analyzed the data and everything, and we came up with the thing. So those things also took quite some amount of time for us. But it was kind of rather productive in a sense to learn something new. And all my students are kind of now getting into all the things that we know that we are doing all the experiments, but this can give us new avenues also when these kind of difficult times really come. And we thought that, okay, can we try learning something new? So we are currently we are trying to implement some of these free energy calculations with the plumate or something like this. So we are just looking through all the internet and getting things done and trying to implement all the stuff. So this way it is going. It was, I would say, it is still going fine, and it was going quite fine in a sense. But since, let's say, I would say late October or so, now I'm a little bit more anxious to really start large scale experiment, I would say. Now, one thing obviously happened because typically after I think August around, so Clovis started coming in the lab because we had given
A couple of more minutes. Maybe.
Yeah.
Two more minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. I'll just finish it off. So that really helped, and our student actually started, who was there already in the campus. So we have got some permission to allow him, and he started working to some extent time. I would say typically last half a month or 1 month. I would say typically around that time. Now, one problem is typically coming, which I think nobody has mentioned in the discussion. The project. Now, project, yes, I am actually facing that kind of a problem right now to some extent, although we have gone quite a large extent. My project money came on 29th of March to JNU account. And obviously, I got an email from IISER, and it's a huge amount of money. So that money was typically obviously stuck for nearly, I would say, 5 months. We couldn't do anything on that particular project. So in a sense, my clock started, let's say, 29th of March, and to be very frank, still now we still don't have those components which we want to order, although we have now the computers and everything already installed. But the large portion of the money has to be still spent. Good news is that now we have finished all the procedures of tendering and everything. So we are just waiting for the purchase committee to be happening, and hopefully we'll be able to give the purchase order to these companies after a few weeks time. So I think that really got delayed. I have not spoken to the funding agency yet. Hopefully we'll be able to get some amount of extension period beyond the 3 years period without probably some additional fund support or whatsoever. I think that's my experience during this time altogether.
Thank you, Sobhan. This business of the funding clock ticking away while the working clock is not working is something that all of us are facing. There are a couple of questions that have, people have indicated a willingness to speak. Let me just invite, I think Bindu Bamba had wanted to say something. She had raised her hand. Yes, Bindu, please go ahead.
She's not here.
A couple of minutes, please. Huh?
She's not here. She has left.
No, I can see her. She is unmute.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
muted, but please unmute yourself.
I'm here. I'm happy that Professor Chandrasekar has had a good experience at University of Hyderabad. I must say I have had just the opposite experience that he has had. I find that we have a lot of committees set up, and a lot of bureaucracy set up and a lot of promises being made, and none of the promises are being honored. For 7 months, my students have been stranded in their villages in Odisha, in Dhenkanal district, etc., where they don't have proper connections. I have asked I've asked the task force for doing something for them. I've got no reply. They had asked us to buy computers for teachers, which I don't see what the point is. But I thought, okay, I'll get myself a computer and I'll give it to my student. When that computer was supposed to have come 6 months ago, 5 months ago, I'm still filling up forms for it. So it's not going to come until the vaccination comes. So although, and um, we have a site. I don't know if Professor Chandrasekar looks at the Facebook site, but there is a U of H Facebook site in which there are people who are so desperate that they're almost on the verge of suicide, and they are even giving us they're giving some tips on how to accommodate them on campus, and they're giving some suggestions which seem to be falling on deaf ears. And I just think that it's all very good to have these meetings, and it's all very good to form committees, but if nothing is really coming out of them, if nothing is done, then what do? I have students who are supposed to go to Fermi Lab for shifts so that they can do their work. I tried to set up a shift center here, but the paperwork is so much. At least during the pandemic, the government should make the paperwork easier and faster. But no, it's becoming more and more delayed, and it is becoming more and more opaque, and there is no transparency. And I'm just, at the end of my tether. And I don't think it has anything to do with Central University being good or not good. I mean, Jadavpur University is doing better. It's not a Central University, or maybe it is.
No, no, Bindu, it's not about. I mean,
So
thank you. I can see that passions are high. Of course, it's not about one university. It's not even about. It's about
the
the
government
system.
is not making the bureaucracy any easier.
Exactly.
It
Okay.
is
Now
not
that
making the paperwork easier. The idea is that during a pandemic, make things easier. The university is not making things easier. There's
okay.
still paperwork. People are so afraid that they're going to go to jail for some fraud of 20, 30, 40 rupees, when people are committing fraud for millions and thousands of rupees
Okay,
all over the
point
country.
point made, Bindu. Thank you for I think highlighting a truly important thing, and that is let us simplify our lives during the pandemic, and that goes not just for us but also for our administration at all levels, including the government. I think that this is an important message that we have to. I mean, Shobhan, you are facing almost the same thing, right? That university is just not, you're not able to move any purchase because everything has to be done with the three committees and with,
Absolutely. Because even if we are using the e-office nowadays,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
much slower, but still so many steps that you have to follow through.
Exactly.
It's,
And I could also say the same thing here at IIT, but this is an important point and a message that hopefully we will communicate. I should tell you that that Madhurima and I have have an editorial coming out in the Telegraph on DFOT, namely this discussion forum and what we are learning from this, because there are some things that administrations or people are not understanding, and that is that as Bindu has pointed out, there are people involved. You need a computer for everybody. Fine, you've given them on paper, but until they have it in their hands, it is of little or no use. Uh, just on the matter of teaching, as all of us have been preparing our talks on laptops and delivering, we are all speaking into laptops. All our students, if they are watching, when they are watching it on cell phones. So all, whatever, this human size has shrunk, to 3 inches. That's what you have. That your authority is now shrunk down to that level, and one has to think a little about it. And this point about the reduction of bureaucracy, it could not be made more effectively and strongly. Thank you very much for making it, Bindu. Can I, and we will certainly raise some of these when we write our next editorial, which should be on some of these discussions. Bhavani Prasad, BP Mandal, did you want to add anything about the difficulties you are facing on thesis submission?
Yeah, this for submission certain bodies at university level. So PhD seminar, and what kind of those things. And we had a lot of difficulties because such takings were held in this pandemic. So any other places has any kind of proposal, or they are at
BP, your voice is not coming out clearly. It's sort of almost musical. Why don't you type your question into this discussion box that we have over here?
okay.
Yeah,
I'll tell.
because it's getting distorted. Madhu, there were some questions on YouTube.
Yes, and let me go to the panelists in no particular order. The first one is, to Dr. Shobhan Sen. Did you get any additional support for, even to the other panelists, of course, did you get any additional support in terms of technical assistance in the absence of research scholars for maintaining the laboratory equipment? Ad hoc, maybe?
No, so that's the point. So nobody was there in a sense for technical stuff. In fact, I am the technical staff in that manner. So every time you have to really go to that lab, which I really like. I don't really mind all those things because I'm an experimentalist.
No, but there are many cases where people are not even allowed to go to the lab.
Yes. So that's the point. So the point is that first of all, because we were inside the campus, that's why probably we could, take some special permission to just go and check the lab. Many places where the entire campus is locked and your labs are fully locked, it's next to impossible. In fact, I was talking to my student Anindita, who is now faculty in IISER Tirupati. Her laser table, the compressor has got broken. Now the rule is that anybody cannot really go and fix that inside because of this, because at that time there were a lot of these cases actually were coming. So you had to wait for a long period of time in a sense. So ideally, yes, the answer to that question is that we never got that kind of technical stuff, support as such. We had to do everything by myself, everything we had to go and check all the time. And that's exactly, we are still doing the same thing.
This is one of the issues that I have faced. We have a campus, the residential side is on one side of the river and the campus on the other side. We were not allowed to come, and to date we don't know how to handle the equipment and we don't have any support. So the next question is to Dr. Chandrasekar. You said that one of your students was there to help you, on the campus and check for the instruments and maintenance, etc. What about the fellowship? I mean, did the university treat this person on par with those who were not there, or were there difficulties?
This fellowship is not connected to whether he is on campus or stuck somewhere. So his fellowship holder, he has been continuously receiving his fellowship. And as far as the maintenance of equipment, Sobhan was telling, our task force made a kind of a very smart decision. In the sense, the restriction was given to PhD students, not for the research fellows. So many postdocs were there to take care of the equipment. They were considered as a staff. Okay. And also, so that is one of the, they were trying to see what they can do to make the system run, because everyone is in shock, everyone is scared. And you do some mistake, and then we have a quarters inside, people are staying, there are several families are living there, and students are staying in the campus. So we can't take a decision in a hurried manner. We have to really see how we have to go. And the postdocs really helped us actually. But this was not the situation. Some of my, for example, in my physics colleague, Dr. Ram Gopal has a laser like femtosecond. He have not one, he has three, and he was really worried about that one, and he used to go to the lab and maintain. And so in fact, I was trying to appreciate. See, better don't complain. It is us. You have to have a leadership. Go and take it. Don't complain about it. How you can solve it? I took care of my students. I called them. I took care of students. Where you are standard? What you didn't any help? Advised him. Do this one. This is what the need of the hour. Every supervisor want to have students, and you don't want to take care of your students. You want someone to make a decision to take care of them, and this is not the responsible way. I mean, it's morally it's not correct. And most of the faculty members took care of the research students. I think this should be the case. If it is not the case, it's not be that case, and things should change.
No, point made, Chandrasekar. I think that on certain aspects people can, but there are issues where it is beyond the capability of the supervisor, and I think that when people voice concerns, it is those aspects that they are worried about. For example, fellowship. And like I'm actually worried seriously about my students' fellowship. The fellowship has ended, but there has been an extension of his PhD duration just because he's not been able to come to work. Now, I can be a big man and give him 20,000 rupees a month or something like that, but it is not possible for everybody to do that.
Yes, yes, that is
Right.
correct.
And it's also, in a sense, not desirable. We would like to see the institution take a certain responsibility, because then it can't be that, Ram student gets it because Ram gives, some 20,000, but so and so student cannot get it because they don't have the money. So it's that people are talking about. Just the fact that bureaucracy has not simplified, that's something which is important. And there are two questions which are, or there's one comment, one from actually the furthest participant we have had in DFOT is Professor Sardera in Sao Paulo. She is actually listening in right now, and she said that this reduction of bureaucracy across the world is absolutely necessary now to cope with the pandemic. Academics everywhere are facing this as an issue, that bureaucracy has to be reduced. And Professor B.P. Mandal from BHU has a sort of a general question, because several of you have had PhD students graduate. So his question is that for thesis submission, there are certain formalities like pre-PhD seminar and so on and so forth. How are these being overcome in different places? Shanky, let me just turn to you, because did you have a student graduate during this period, or was it Anindita?
Yeah, I did have a student who graduated during this period.
Was
So
there
in
a
IISER Kolkata,
relaxation of
uh, yeah, so in IISER Kolkata, we have a dean of academics who's trying to do a lot of things, Professor Shomitra Banerjee and his team. So the academic section decided to go completely online. So of course, I needed to sign my student's PhD thesis. So it was an e-thesis final submission, and I could sign and send a scanned copy. And we had a presentation which was on Google Meet, and he was awarded his degree on, so the convocation didn't happen. So he was just told that, yes, you've been awarded a degree. And then I collected his degree certificate and couriered it to him because he needed the hard copy before leaving for his postdoc. Otherwise, people could just download the soft copy from the website. So we have a portal on which all the certificates have been uploaded, and that's what we are doing. So anybody who needs a hard copy needs to get somebody to collect it. Otherwise, you can just download it from the portal. So we have completely had a very smooth system for this now.
And Surinder Reddy wants to add that SRTM University has given an extension of 6 months to all PhD students so far. But I don't understand, Surinder. Have they given fellowship for 6 months also, or if they just allowed the period to be extended? In some of our universities over here, by our I mean, the government, federal or state universities, extension of time is fine, but extension of fellowship is a financial matter which requires the
Yeah.
approval of
It's
65
really the
different.
CSIR and DST and DBT who have to give the fellowship extension. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
I agree. All right. So this is what we are also trying to highlight, that time is passing, students, and this contributes a lot to the anxiety. So Surendra, can you please clarify? Does SRTM also give a fellowship to the students, or is it just an extension of time?
No, it is an extension of time, sir.
That's
And
cheap.
and I mean, my question also, that why can't UGC or other can give extension for fellowship also?
No, I mean that is actually the point that we are all making. DPT, DST, UGC, etc., etc. The funding agencies have got to extend the time. If if one is lucky and that one students are in the middle of this period, then perhaps you can think of going ahead without an extension. But for some of our senior students, this is a problem. And what another thing that we have also realized is that our senior students are extensions of ourselves in the lab. They are very important people in the lab to run the experiments, to run the equipment, and so on and so forth. And when they are not being supported or not having that kind of surety, that can be very unsettling for the lab.
Uh, I mean, I'd just like to add that it's not just that. See, in my case, what happens is one of my students is in this fifth plus sixth year, and she has to complete the work by taking another set of data using the quantitative microscope, which just got prepared before the lockdown, and our hostels are completely shut down. Like, there's no question of allowing anybody here. So but in the sixth year, seventh year, and where does the mental health of the student come? It's not for the want of us. It's not even me giving 20,000. I mean, I can give even more, but there's no way I can bring her to the campus and get this work done.
Yeah.
So there's this question in the same regard to Dr. Sangha. Were the Mizoram University's hostels open during this period? Because you said that your students were there on the campus to Dr. Sangha?
I think we can come back to Sangha.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Huh.
Were your hostels open during the pandemic, at least partially?
Hostelities are partially open, not for a whole. Those who are still staying from outside the state, they are still staying. Only few of them are still staying. MSc postgraduate student and other undergraduate student in the BTech and this BEd, they are not allowing to come. Only research scholars, few of them. Like one hostel like it is a capacity of about 104 students, but about 4 or 5 students are still staying.
Okay, thank you.
And now also my student, my research scholar is also coming back from Odisha. He already arrived day before yesterday here in Aizawl, but he's in the quarantine center. Once he get through the test, then he will be coming back to the campus.
Okay, because we have shut down.
So they are very cautious about all this.
No, I know that most institutions have shut down the hostels, and sort of it's been drastic. There's a question here from Devashish.
Shankarnarayanan want to say
I have a question. I wanted to ask a question. See, beside this, what is also going to be worrying in the next couple of years is the postdoc positions.
Yes.
See, the students are leaving, but then the chances of them going abroad, for instance, is also going to be not very easy for some. So there is also some effort has to be made such that these people have to be absorbed in as a postdoc in some places actually. And if the money is less, it's not going to happen. So that is also another kind of insecurity the students, PhD students feel, because see, they know that if they do well, they will definitely get a position, right? That's what it is usually. Like if they write few papers, if they reasonably do well, then it is you will get a postdoc, at least reasonably good postdoc. But now that is not there. Now the insecurity has increased because even if you do well, we don't know whether it's going to get, because we don't know whether the money is available. right? So that also increases the anxiety of the PhD student, at least whomever I have talked to in the group. That is also a problem which we don't know how to solve it. I'm just telling you again, it again goes to finances, but that is something has to be done.
It's not just a question of finances, I mean, this is there's a many dimensions to this particular problem because for you to be able to take up a postdoc, that country has got to be willing to admit you, and or you've got to be willing to go to that country.
Country, yes.
And one of my students is really facing this problem because especially at institutions like JNU, students come after a lot of crossing a lot of barriers, including the one at home. They've got to tell their parents that they would rather do a PhD than contribute immediately to the family's the finances. And what is happening right now is that with 6 or 8 months of a lockdown and no prospect of a future, I think that parents are beginning to put a certain pressure on their children, saying, "Why are you going for a PhD? What are you going to achieve by doing a PhD? Because finally you're not going to get a postdoc. All those dreams of going to America and all are over." So I mean, they're going to have to find more argument within themselves to fight. Let me just take a question from Devashish, please.
Sure.
Devashish?
Yeah, my question is actually to Shanky and to some extent to Sobhan. You managed quite well. You said that you organize things and your students, you managed to write papers. But you also said that you have a cluster that you had to shut down. So the question is, did you have to change the nature of your research work because you didn't have access to this cluster? And I mean, you may have had still, but your students certainly could not use that. And did your students have laptops at least to work on, the PhD students, or
Yeah,
they also...
all the students had all the students had laptops. Okay. But then the cluster, I had to shut it down for two reasons. One is basically that uh, uh, just for the security reason, because I cannot run immediately. In the sense, if there are, it's just a cluster of two of two with along with my colleague. So out of 10 students, one of them could go anytime. It's possible. At middle of the night, I don't know whether I have those issues were there. So for the reason for that, I shut it down. But what I did is I switched on the desktops, and where I can individually go and I can there is no major issue of if it goes, then it is just I have to change a part, so it is not a problem.
So your student is the
they could access it through the VPN. Yeah, so they could access it through the VPN. So the only thing is they need a connection for a few minutes, and then they connect it, and then they run it, and then they can come back in the background. They can run whatever they want to run. So I did change the focus a bit different, and I stagger it later. So I did do that actually. For a few of my students, I told them that we will worry about the ones which involves huge computation maybe next year. So that I could do it because they are in the third year. But if it was final year student, I don't think so. I basically switched on the desktop and 2 or 3 desktops, and then they were running continuously. So that's what I did.
Maybe Sobhan wants to add anything from his experience.
If time permits, I don't know when time. It's okay. I can just add one comment. See, this is one important issue. So obviously we have here, as obviously in SPS, we have one big cluster which was turned off. Obviously we had to turn off, and now it is on. The other one was on, so which I also look after. So it was always running throughout the lockdown. But most of the work we have done, especially in the workstation. So in a sense, my student is kind of still doing it the same way, that she makes all the initial structures and everything like this, and then when you have to really run the productions and all, I really go with the file and really send it over there and run it. Now, this is what also initial period we had a big issue, and that you have to really understand from the student's point of view. So my student was there at some place her house is where you have all the jammers, and even the 4G was not coming to the phone. So she couldn't actually access these work sessions through team viewers and everything for a long period of time. So she had to actually move to her aunt's place somewhere, which she had some better connectivity, and then she started working. So in a sense, that work probably started 1 month back, and now we are kind of back with something that we are doing it. But yes, for last 5 months, effectively we couldn't do anything. We were just learning some of the things. That's it.
Okay.
So one last question before we wind down now, and it's more of a general question. Given that the focus of research all over the place is about the vaccination and the possible medicines for COVID, what is the possibility that all the money will get diverted there and other fields will start losing money, especially for research?
Is this a concern? Is it?
It is a concern, especially with regard to things like ecology and evolution and other aspects of biology.
Yeah. Okay.
So, any idea whether it will affect?
Yeah, for me, it's a huge concern because actually, we are talking about bureaucracy and funding. So I had the reverse experience of Sobhan because my project was ending. And I did not get an extension because they said you have to submit the SEUC, and I had to return back money because we could not complete the fieldwork. And they refused to give us money for the expenses students had to bear during when they were stranded. So I had to pay out of my pocket, but money went back. I couldn't use it. And now I don't have a project. I don't know when we are going to have a call. And if you know SERB, there is no call this time in September. There is a lot of talk about whether blue skies research or ecological research will be funded at all. If you ask people up there, they'll say yes, of course, all kinds of research is important, but we don't see calls coming around, and it is actually a big concern for people like me who work on subjects very far away from COVID. I have even been suggested maybe in some places, people are using dogs to sniff out COVID. So maybe you should apply for a grant where you can see if stray dogs can sniff out COVID. I tried telling them that if stray dogs on the streets were sniffing out COVID, then we are actually going to have a lot of problems. So I think there is a lot of thrust in making people do research of a certain kind, which will get funded. And if you refuse to do that, if you want to continue on your specific line of research, then funding can become a big issue, and that is a big concern.
Yeah, I mean, one furthest away from COVID research, Anindita. I think Shanky, you're in the sort of distant part of the.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
No, but I think
don't do experimental work, so that kind of saves me a bit more. Yeah, so for right now at least.
No, but
but luckily, what happened is I got a matrix grant just before the COVID. They approved a matrix grant just before the COVID, so that will sustain me for 3 years. So I think that should help.
I got a Fermilab grant, but my students can't go to Fermilab.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, these are issues. I think that we're going to have to face up to this reality. Not only will the funding be lower, but as Anindita has indicated, we may see more directed research and less of the kind of freedom that we have all grown accustomed to having. Well, at least for the short term. Okay, I hope it will not last for a long time, but in the short term, there's going to be a serious funds crunch. And we have to see somehow, by sharing our stories with not just with each other, but also with our administration, I think it's going to be important to point out that X university is able to do this, and why can we not do this, and basically lead by example. And share our concerns about keeping a research activity, a research profile alive through this pandemic and well beyond that. Guys, thank you very much for being with us today, and and sharing and being candid about your experience through this COVID. Much power to all of you in your continued research career, and thanks again. Okay, Madhu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.